to go particularly to a place called the Isles of Scilly, which doesn't like to think it's part of Cornwall, but it is. What to say about this film? And first of all, the festival, I think. I was very surprised to learn there was a festival for film, for young people, and literature, all together in the same bundle. I think it's unique. I don't know of another film and literature festival anywhere, so this town's doing something quite remarkable, which is why when I was invited, I thought this is just terrific, and it must be supported. So here I am, and my job really before the film is shown is not really to talk about the film, because I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to talk about the book even. What I want to talk about is a little bit about how lucky you have to be to have a film made of a book of yours. And in my case, I'll just tell you a tiny story about a breakfast I had at a festival called the Hay Festival about 23 years ago. I get up before my wife when I'm in a hotel because she takes a really long time to get up. So I have my breakfast mostly on my own. She's in the audience here, she's probably still asleep, but I am usually breakfasting on my own. I was sitting there breakfasting on my own. I looked across the breakfast room and there was sitting a friend of mine called Frank Cottrell Boyce, who's the most wonderful writer. And I like him, he's a really lovely fellow, and I walked across the room to say hello, mostly because I was lonely. And he said, hello Michael, and I said, hello Frank. And then we were just talking, and it just occurred to me, out of the blue. I just was thinking about Kensuke's Kingdom, I have no idea why. But I said to him, Frank, if I gave you this book, would you look at it and consider writing the film screenplay for it? And he said, of course. He had 7 children around him. He's got 7 children. He's got time to write books and have 7 children. He's an amazing man. Well, he didn't have the children. His wife had the children. Do you understand what I mean? So we ended up having a conversation about Kensuke's Kingdom, gave him the book, went away. I didn't think I'd hear from him again because people often do that sort of thing. Anyway, the lovely thing was that a week or so later he wrote, he said, I'd love to do this. I'd love to do it. That was 23 years ago. So this film took all that time to make. He wrote it very fast, that wasn't the problem. The problem is money. When you make a film, it costs a huge amount of money just to make it. When you write a book, it costs one thing and one thing only, time. You don't have to spend any money, you just write the story. With a film, you've got to find the money, because particularly with an animated film, there were 200 people had to be gathered together to make this film you're about to see. 200. And they cost money. Of course they do. They need paying. People do need paying for their work. So that, and the promotion of it, all that sort of thing, costs a fortune. And extraordinarily, it just kept getting up and down. The film cost £10 million to make, and most of you will be thinking, well, that's huge. Well, it's peanuts in terms of what films usually cost. It was made in this country by the same people who made that Christmas. Claire, what's the Christmas story? She always. I got half a memory, but luckily she's got the other half. What's it called?
Father Christmas?
No. No. What's the most famous children's film? What do you say? Who said Snowman? Yes, terribly well known, easy to remember, Snowman. They're the same people who made Snowman, so they're pretty good at what they do. So I was confident we'd get it made. But we'd raised £1 million, another one, and we just couldn't get there. And we almost failed, except, funnily enough, for the same people who've helped with this festival today. People called the British Film Institute. They give grants to films. And we got lucky. And this is what luck does. It's cruel, but it's luck. Do you remember during the lockdown, the COVID and all the rest of it? Many people simply could not do their work because it meant they had to come in close contact with other people. Filmmaking was just the same. So regular films, where the actors would come together, the camera people, they'd all be there together, they couldn't make them. So the British Film Institute had lots of money which comes from government, which they were trying to give to certain films, but they weren't being made because it was shut down. When you make animation, you don't need to be near anyone. You sit in your little room and you do your drawings and you're on your computer, and as I say, 200 people around the world joined together, and they only joined together because these people, the BFI, gave finally all the money that was needed for the film to come out. Anyway, I wanted to tell you that to show you what hard work it is to make a film. And it's nothing to do with me at all. I just sat there, hoping and hoping that it would happen. And finally I got a phone call from Frank Cottrell-Boyce who said, you won't believe this, Michael, it's happening. It's happening after all this time. And then I went to see the film, and I was there on the first night. I think the expression is, it blew me away, because it's so good. And I have had quite a few films made of my books, and almost all of them, except this one, I find fault with. So I'm watching a film, and you're thinking, hang on, that's not in the book. Why have they left that bit out? Why this? Why that? And I keep stamping my foot. And even with the most expensive film we had made, which was one called War Horse. Have you seen War Horse, any of you at all? Yeah, put your hand down. It's fine, but it's not that good, because there are things in it which really irritate me. And my wife is also irritated. I'll give you one scene. By the way, is Steven Spielberg here? It's okay, I can go on then. The thing is, there's a scene in War Horse where a horse is ploughing a very muddy field, yes, in Devon, a very muddy field in Devon. And this is Joey, and he's ploughing almost for the first time and finding it really hard. And what do? They plough this field on camera with a horse going downhill. Any farmer here knows you don't do that, because when there are furrows, the water will run straight down and away. You want it to soak into the land. Anyone knows that! But they don't know that in Hollywood. And so every time this scene comes on, I'm thinking, why do you not do some research? You know? And amazingly, the war scenes are brilliant, utterly brilliant. Also, much is really wonderful. Then they get the little things wrong. And then the guy who does the ploughing, okay? He is the most clean-cut, Californian-looking boy you've ever seen in your life. And then they close on his shoes. They're not boots. They're not muddy old boots. They look as if they were made at some really smart cobbler somewhere in Bond Street in London. It just doesn't work in certain ways. Anyway, this is not like that. This is a totally wonderful film. At the end of it, if you disagree with me, come and disagree. I don't mind being disagreed with. I won't talk to you again, but I don't mind being disagreed with. Lovely that you came along. I really hope you enjoyed. And afterwards we'll have time for questions. So have questions ready in your head. I don't care if they're against it or for it. That's not the point. I want to know what you think afterwards. And any questions that you've got, please let's have them. You okay? Hope you enjoyed it. If you don't, just walk out. It's not a problem. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
The way I think about it is this. The book is one thing, and the film is another. If someone says they want to make a play of your book or a film of your book, I know it's going to be different. The question is whether it's going to make a great play or a great film. That's all I care about, really. So, for instance, if any of you have seen the play of War Horse, you will know that the National Theatre, who made that, brought extraordinary people to make the puppets for horses, to make the story work on a stage. It's different from the book. Just to explain to you what I'm thinking, is that when you have a book, it's in your hand. The only way you comprehend the story is from the print on that page. The print on that page is a message from the writer to you. You then make of it in your head what it is you are seeing and feeling. It's just from the print. There's nothing between you and the author except print. A film and theatre go a stage further. They take that story and they interpret it. And they've got to do that according to the medium. So a stage is up there, there's lighting, there's sound, there's music. It's in a book. If you make the music, it's in your head. No one is making the music. Think of that film that we just had. The music, I think, is wonderful. It's stirring, it's extraordinary. In a way, that's what makes the film totally different from the book. And yes, there are places in the story where they change it. Hands up those of you who've actually read the book. Higher, higher. Be proud. Put your hands down. Put your hands up if you've not read the book. You should be thoroughly ashamed of yourself. Anyway, the point is, it's not supposed to be the book. It's the story from the book. So when you begin the book, has anyone got a copy of the book with them? I thought you might have. I'm going to just read you one thing from this is the book. For those of you who haven't read it, that's it. Very, very cheap. Why do you think writers like you to buy their book? Hands up. Only the children. I want intelligent answers about this. Why do writers like you to buy the book? Yes. To make money. You're a horrible child. But you speak truth. We like you to buy the book. But the point is that I just told you, it's only the words. I will read you the first line of this book, which is the best line in the whole book. So don't read the rest. Actually, it's the best line I've ever written. Here it is. I disappeared on the night before my 12th birthday. That's it. So what that does is set in your head, how come? Why? And then you read on. That's what you're trying to do. With a film, very often you get into it quicker. So you set the scene, and they set the scene on the boat, rather than in the preamble before it. And so you get right deep into the story, because you've only got, remember, an hour and a half, 2 hours at most to tell the story on the film. If you read this book properly, even as a shortish book like this, it'll take you many, many more hours than that to read it. So that's the difference, really. It's a different thing, and writers like me mustn't expect the film or the play just to reproduce what I wrote. I want it better than what I have written. So in the case of this, they achieved that hugely. In fact, I tell you what I wish. I wish that they'd made the film before I wrote the book. I think I would have made it, and I mean this genuinely, I think I'd have made it a better story. And you can always make it a better story. You don't get a second chance at it. The only time I get to really read this story is if I'm reading it to a class of children. I don't read it to myself anymore now. I know it too well. You only read a book because you want to know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. The ending is different. I've got an opinion about the end. Do you want to hear my... Yeah, okay. Those of you who haven't read the book, this maybe is a reason to read it. Because I get to the end of the story, and that's the same. Michael is rejoined with his family. And it has essentially a happy ending, though the whole business of the story is deeply sad and all the rest of it, and the leaving of Kensuke is very, very sad. But I tell you what I felt. When I put the full stop, and I will read you the last, I've read you the first line, I will read you the last line. Right, here we are. For almost a year, my mother and father had searched for me. No one would help them, for no one would believe I could still be alive. Not a chance in a million, they said. My father, too, he later admitted, had given me up for dead, but never my mother. So far as she was concerned, I was alive. I had to be alive. She simply knew it in her heart. So they had sailed from island to island, searching on until they found me. Not a miracle, just faith. That's where I end the story. And then when I'd finished that, I read it through, and I showed it to Claire, my wife. And she's always very frank about her opinion of my stories. Can I give you some advice, you young people? When you choose a partner in life, Do not choose one who is going to be honest with you. Not one who is going to flatter you, particularly if you write books. She doesn't do that. She didn't say anything, but I had always felt that that's not enough. Because it seems like a little adventure story on an island, and isn't that nice, happy ever after. I didn't want that. So I wrote a postscript. And the postscript of the book, I'll read it to you, it's very short. Postscript. 4 years after this book was first published, I received this letter. Dear Michael, I write to tell you in my bad English that my name is Michiya Ogawa. I am the son of Dr. Kensuke Ogawa. I read your book. I thought my father had died in the war. My mother died only 3 years ago, still believing this. As you say in your book, we lived in Nagasaki, but we were very lucky. Before the bomb fell, we went into the countryside to see my grandmother for a few days, so we lived. I have no memories of my father, only some photographs and your book. It will be a pleasure to talk to someone who knew my father as you did. Maybe one day we could meet. I hope so. With my best wishes, Michiya Ogawa. A month after receiving this letter, I went to Japan and I met Michiya. He laughs just like his father did. So it makes a kind of serious note at the end. It's not happily ever after. And here's the really interesting thing. I love it when truth imitates fiction. 7 or 8 years after writing this book, I did get a letter from Japan. And I got it from a relative of this man, the real man I have based this story on, who said, it's quite extraordinary, he said, you didn't know my great uncle or whatever it was, but I did. And Kensuke in the book is really like him. And that's a letter which I got. So I had a fake letter, I got a real letter, and I got the story, and I got the movie.
Yes, this is working.
What's my favourite character in that book?
What's your favourite
Oh, the favourite book that I've written.
And your favourite character from that favourite book?
Okay, I'm going to ask a question back to the audience here. Are there any mothers and fathers in this audience who have had more than one child? Put your hands up. Keep your hands up. If I asked any of those mothers and fathers, which is your favourite child? Do you understand what I'm saying? A book, when you write it, is just like a child. You made it yourself, it belongs in your heart, and you can't compare it to another one. So yes, I've written lots and lots and lots and lots of books because I'm very, 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 very old. But if I compare them, it makes it all wrong. I tell you what I can say. Generally speaking, the books I love most are those that seem to be loved by the people that I love. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I quite like my wife. If she loves one of my books, then I'm inclined to love it more myself. Do you understand? If she rubbishes it, well, she doesn't actually ever rubbish it, but she might say critical things about it. And then it doesn't sour it for me, but it doesn't make it quite as deep an affection I have for the book. But by and large, I love them all because they're my babies.
Is Michael you?
Yes, I suppose so. That's the reason I call that. Well, let's deal with the names for a start. I have used Michael in certainly, I would say, a quarter of my books. The main character is Michael. This is because I like to feel when I'm writing the story that I'm in the middle of the story. I'm taking part in the story. Have any of you read a book of mine called The Butterfly Lion? Okay, well there's another one with a Michael in the middle of it. And
In fact, that one's got a Michael Morpurgo in it. It's ridiculous. But names are important. And for me, I do like to write in the first person. I like it to be me at the centre of it. I imagine it deeper. I imagine it more vividly, I think, if I'm there. I don't like the name Michael, actually. I'm not very fond of it. I don't like my first name, and I really don't like my second name. It's very ugly. I want a different first name, but it's too late. And I want a different surname. And I'm not going to get one, so there you are. Yeah?
How many drafts did Kensuke Kingdom take?
How many drafts? Well, if I'm honest, I don't remember, but I can tell you normally how it works. I write very freely. When I write as if I'm telling you the story now. And that's, for me, the most natural way of writing. I tell it down onto the page. So there are lots of mistakes, they don't matter, because I read it through afterwards, and I correct it. So in a way, it doesn't get to the first draft until I've corrected quite a lot. Once I've done a first draft I'm happy with, I told you I hand it to my wife. She reads it and comes back and says this, that, or the other, and I pay attention to that. Well, I'm telling you that now because she's here, and I do. And then I suppose I do another draft after that when I'm really sure that it's flowing along the way I want it to be. And then I send it off to the publisher. They see it really when Claire's seen it. I've rewritten it a bit. It's not an exact science. I do a little bit at a time, a little bit of a correction. I think when you write stories, it's about the same. You write your story, you correct it a bit, and maybe you read it through and think, yeah, that page it needs doing again. So it's a bit like that. It's bit by bit by bit until I got it where I want it. So I would say between 1 and 2.5 drafts, to be accurate.
What inspired you to write this book?
You did. I was a teacher for 8 years in primary school. And I was lucky in my primary school. I had a wonderful head teacher. I'll tell you her name because I want other people to know it. She was called Mrs. Skiffington. Isn't that a wonderful name? Skiffington. Anyway, she was an eccentric. She was one of these very strange, rather wonderful head teachers who had lots and lots of ideas. And she came into the staff room one morning and she said, I had an idea in my bath last night. I have decided after 40 years of teaching that from 3 to past, the children do not want to learn anything. And I've decided that we also are too tired to teach them anything. So why waste the last half hour of the day when it should be spent on the most important thing you can do, which is to tell a good story or read a good story to the children. So she said, I want everyone, from today, she said it like that, 3 o'clock, I want every class to be reading a story to the children. And here's the thing, she said, do not ask questions at the end of that half hour. Let them go away so that the story's in their head and they're thinking about it, they're dreaming about it, they're worrying about it, they're loving it, they're thinking, I hope it gets better. It doesn't matter. Do not start quizzing them on the story. Just let them walk out. And I think that's quite the best thing a young teacher ever was told. And I think it should happen in every school in this country, that you read a story every single day. And it's a story the teacher should know. How long does it take to write?
A 200-page book.
That's a very, very exact question. The answer is I don't know, and it's not a matter of length. That is the truth of it. I've started writing in my old age quite a lot of poems, which by their very nature are short. And it takes just as long. And I've written very long books as well. I'll tell you about the longest one actually, because we might all meet again here in another year or 2 years, because the next film to be made is being made now in France and bizarrely in Vietnam and in other places all over the world. It's another animated film, long one like this, which is being made now. And it's going to be called, the film is going to be called Lucy Lost. And it comes from a book of mine called Listen to the Moon. I'll just tell you why it's called Lucy Lost. It's quite interesting. I tend to base all my stories, and many of you will know this if you've read them, on something that's true. I'm not a great writer like Philip Pullman, or indeed like Lewis Carroll. I can't make fantasy stories out of my head. I need the truth of history, or memory, or something that I've been told that I know is true. So I start with truth. The truth in the film you've just seen is that there was more than one Japanese soldier left behind on an island in the Pacific after the Second World War. And one of them stayed there for 27 years before he was found. And he was found by accident. Someone coming by, yes, in a yacht, found him, took him back to Japan. That's the truth of the story. And it's also true, as you know, that people sail around the world, and sometimes they have a dog on board. In other words, I use stuff that could possibly happen. And I think that's very important to me, that there is truth at the heart of it. What was your question? To what?
To write a book, a 200-page book.
I wasn't answering your question at all. If that happens again, would you please remind me to answer the question? A 200-page book. The reason I did say it was this. If you're reading something if you're telling a story about something that's historical, you have to get the story right. Particularly in the case of serious stories about war. Can't make them up. Has to come from something true. And with Lucy Lost, there was the most, well, you all know about the sinking of the Titanic, don't you? There was another ship, just as big, which went down off the southern coast of Ireland in the First World War. It was a British ship called the Lusitania, and it was sailing past the south of Ireland when a submarine, a German submarine, because we were at war with Germany at the time, put a torpedo in it. And no one quite knows why, but it sank really quickly. And I can't remember, 1,500 people or something like that were drowned. And it was only 12 miles away from the shore, not like the Titanic in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So the people rowed out, no motorboats then, they rowed out to see if they could save survivors. And they did, but many they couldn't save. And as they were coming away, all these people who rowed that 12 miles out from Kinsale, they saw the most extraordinary shaped object on the ocean. And it was a piano. It was the piano from the place where they had meals in those days. It's called a saloon, I think. And that huge grand piano was floating on the ocean. And they rowed towards it, and there was a child on top. And they saved the child. That's all I know historically, but that was enough to give me the idea for it. And then talking about 200 pages isn't the point. Then I had to work out who that child was. Then I had to work out what had happened to the mother, the father. Why was she on the boat? All sorts of questions like that. And then I could write it. So why don't I just say that each book takes quite a while to dream up. Not to write, it's not the writing that takes the time, it's the dreaming up and the researching. Does that more answer your question? It's kind of you to say so.
There's one more question, I think.
Oh, can we do two?
Go on then, quick.
Yeah, go on. How old were you when you wrote your first book?
I think I was, because it was a long time ago. I think I was probably about 30. Is that right, Claire?
Younger than that.
Younger than that? Do you mean I was ever younger than that? What do you think, 26, 27?
I think so, yeah.
Right. She tells me I was 26 or 27. I say I was 30. We will argue about it over lunch.
Okay, our final question. This young man has been desperate to ask this question. Let's stand up.
Are you a dog person or a cat person?
What a great question. Are you a dog person?
or a cat person?
Dog person or a cat person? I'll give you the answer to that question in two ways, really. I'm a people person rather than a dog or a cat person, but dog or cat, definitely dog. And I will tell you why. We have had both dogs and cats. I'm trying to think whatever domestic animal we haven't had. Now we are reduced because of our age to 4 goldfish. But we have had dogs and cats. I prefer dogs because I can get a better relationship with them. The cats that we've had, they're okay. You can stroke them from time to time. Mostly they don't want you to. And they do something I don't like. They kill birds. And I think we would have a cat again now if my wife and myself, weren't really fond of the goldfinches and the blackbirds that come to the garden. The notion of them being killed by a cat because we kept it, I don't think I could bear. So dogs, and you'll find an awful lot of cats and dogs in my books. The last dog we had, I'll tell you about her. She was called Bercelet. It was very important. She was a lurcher, and my wife was very fond of her, but I had a problem, and my relationship with that dog, my wife got in the way, because that dog was much more fond of my wife than me, and made it really obvious. So I would walk into the room, the kitchen, where she usually had a little basket, and she saw me, she'd look up, and sometimes she'd start shaking. And she wasn't trembling with joy, I promise you. She was slightly nervous of me, always. When Claire's in the room, she would simply, her eyes would follow Claire everywhere, all the time. And that used to make me really cross. I could never love that dog as well as she did. If I had another dog, I think I would want a dog that made me happy. I like spaniels because they wiggle everything.
Thank you so much, Michael. Can we give Michael a round of applause? The film. So, it's actually... We're not going down the road here. We were going to turn that off film. Kensuke comes in much earlier than the book to move the things on. How did you feel about that change?
Well, what I do feel about books and film.
Microphone's not working.
Everything is working perfectly. It's just that you don't believe it is. Does it work now? No. Does it work now? No. We have issues.